Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. In the vast lobby of a Manhattan office building, a chilly atmosphere reigned, punctuated by the hurried footsteps of executives and the click of heels on the marble floor. But that day, all this activity was about to be overshadowed by an unexpected incident. James Whittaker, a businessman known for his arrogance and exaggerated sense of superiority, observed the building's concierge, Marcus Johnson, a black man in his 40s with a calm but proud expression. Irritated by a trivial matter, Whittaker decided to seize a moment of power and humiliate Marcus in front of the employees and visitors present. "How dare you leave this hall in this state?" he shouted, his voice ringing like a hammer. "You're supposed to serve, not vandalize this building." Marcus looked up, unperturbed, but a slight shudder betrayed his displeasure. The witnesses averted their eyes, embarrassed by the blatant injustice. Whittaker, pleased with his small amount of power, didn't yet realize that he had just lit a spark that would quickly ignite into a blaze. What Whittaker didn't know was that Marcus wasn't just a janitor. Behind his uniform was a man respected in the community for his integrity, wisdom, and quiet strength. And that day, that gratuitous humiliation would trigger a chain of events that would completely transform Whittaker's life, and force him to confront the consequences of his arrogance and racism. The next morning, the building seemed normal, as if nothing had happened. But Marcus Johnson still felt the weight of James Whittaker's gaze on his shoulders. Every time Whittaker passed through the lobby, a contemptuous smile played on his lips, a silent reminder of yesterday's humiliation. Marcus, true to his dignity, didn't respond. He carried out his work meticulously, cleaning every surface, rearranging every chair, as if his pride were reflected in his painstaking movements. But the employees who had witnessed the scene couldn't forget Whittaker's arrogant and cruel performance. Murmurs circulated in the corridors, some expressed sympathy for Marcus, others, a silent anger toward Whittaker. Meanwhile, James Whittaker relished his position of power. He considered himself untouchable, certain that no one would ever dare answer him. But arrogance always comes at a price. As he climbed the stairs to his office, he didn't see Marcus behind him, carrying a stack of files. Marcus merely murmured a polite, "hello," but Whittaker, irritated by this simple gesture, erupted in anger. "Marcus! Watch out! You might knock over my papers," he shouted, his voice echoing in the hall. Marcus apologized calmly, but something in his gaze made Whittaker hesitate. There was a quiet strength, a dignity that neither humiliation, nor anger, nor insults could break. For the first time, a small crack appeared in Whittaker's arrogant facade, but he ignored it, convinced that he remained in control. However, at that precise moment, an unexpected witness was observing the scene, a young lawyer who worked in the building. She mentally noted everything: Whittaker's behavior, Marcus's patience, and the glaring imbalance between power and humanity. This silent observation would soon play a crucial role. In the days that followed, James Whittaker continued to display his unrestrained arrogance. Every interaction with Marcus seemed to be an opportunity to assert his superiority. He criticized him for small, imaginary mistakes, for insignificant details, and the building staff began to murmur, uncomfortable with this daily tyranny. But Marcus didn't give in. Every hurtful remark, every condescending look, he endured patiently, never losing his dignity. He knew that giving in to anger would only strengthen the man who believed he had all the power. One morning, Whittaker ordered Marcus to clean the lobby before the arrival of an important investor, while belittling him in front of several employees. "Make sure everything shines perfectly. You can't afford to make a mistake, Marcus." Marcus nodded calmly, but inside, a new determination was growing. He began to observe Whittaker more closely, noting every weakness, every character trait, every excess of arrogance. He understood that for Whittaker to truly regret his actions, he would have to strike where the man's pride was most vulnerable. That same day, the lawyer who had witnessed the incident the previous day approached Marcus in the lobby. Her name was Rachel Thompson. She was young and perceptive, and she had been working in the building for a few months. "I saw you the other day," she said with a slight smile. "You kept your composure despite everything. It's impressive." If you ever need someone to support you or to help you assert your rights, I can help you. Marcus looked at her and nodded. A glimmer of hope crossed his eyes. He was no longer alone. For the first time since Whitaker had begun to humiliate him, he felt that the situation could change. Whitaker, for his part, was beginning to feel an unusual tension. Some employees were exchanging knowing glances with Marcus, and he noticed stifled laughter at his expense. He shrugged, thinking it was all insignificant, but this small crack in his authority was about to widen. Blinded by his arrogance, Whitaker decided he had to mark Marcus once again to assert his authority. This time, he was going to push things further. One afternoon, while Marcus was making his usual rounds, Whitaker called out to him in front of several employees and visitors. "Marcus," he yelled, his voice trembling with rage. "I want you to carry these bags of supplies to the top floor. And hurry. Don't waste my time." Marcus, silent but determined, nodded. As he began to carry the bags, Whitaker added sarcastically, "Be careful, Marcus, I wouldn't want anyone to see that you're not capable of doing your job properly." At that precise moment, one of the bags slipped from Marcus's hands, hitting the floor with a thud. The files inside scattered. Whitaker burst out laughing at what he perceived as Marcus's incompetence, humiliating the man in front of all the witnesses. But what Whitaker didn't know was that among the fallen documents were confidential papers related to a major contract he had been working on for weeks. One of the visitors present, who happened to be an influential business partner, retrieved the documents and eyed the arrogant man suspiciously. "James," the visitor said sharply, "do you really need this kind of behavior in your team?" Whitaker, caught off guard, felt his blood run cold. The arrogance that had defined him until now collided brutally with reality. His behavior had a price. Marcus, silent and calm, gathered the documents with a dignity that contrasted sharply with Whitaker's attitude. At that moment, a serious crack appeared in Whitaker's aura. He understood, too late, that his need to dominate and belittle Marcus had had direct consequences on his career and on how others perceived him. For the first time, he felt the shadow of regret touch his mind, a regret he had never imagined possible. After the incident with the files, Whitaker began to feel the different looks he received from the building's employees and visitors. The whispers, the discreet smiles exchanged behind his back, all of it began to erode his confidence. But his pride refused to admit he had made a mistake. Marcus, for his part, had never sought direct revenge. His strength lay in his patience and dignity. But he knew that every humiliation suffered could be transformed into a subtle lesson for the one who had inflicted it. A few days later, an unexpected event occurred. A building inspection committee was scheduled to visit to assess the safety and cleanliness of the premises. Whitaker, still believing he could impress the committee by humiliating Marcus, ordered the concierge to prepare the entire lobby in record time. Marcus executed the task perfectly, but with a strategic twist. He intentionally left certain visible areas of the hall immaculate, while other minor imperfections remained, discreet but noticeable to attentive inspectors. He knew these small errors couldn't be attributed to him personally, but they would be enough to create a negative image for Whitaker, since he was the one in charge and in charge. During the inspection, the committee members observed everything and noted every detail. Whitaker confidently walked around talking about the cleanliness of the building, unaware that his own choices highlighted his inability to properly manage his staff. At the end of the inspection, one of the inspectors, a stern and respected man, cast a heavy glance at Whitaker. "Mr. Whitaker, certain areas show a lack of oversight. We will need to review your management and responsibility in this project." Whitaker felt panic rising within him. The shadow of regret was now spreading deeper. He was beginning to understand that he had not only humiliated Marcus, but had also created a situation where his own weaknesses were exposed. Marcus, silent and dignified, watched Whitaker grapple with the situation. He had said nothing, done nothing visible. But the message was clear: power and blind arrogance do not always triumph. After the botched inspection, James Whitaker could no longer ignore the obvious: his arrogance and racism had real consequences. The previously silent stares of his employees grew heavier. Even his business colleagues began to question his decisions. But for Whitaker, the hardest thing to bear was the lingering feeling of humiliation. Every morning, watching Marcus walk calmly and proudly across the hall, Whitaker felt a mixture of irritation and involuntary admiration. How could Marcus remain so dignified despite everything he had endured? The question haunted him. One afternoon, Whitaker found himself alone in the hall with Marcus. He hesitated for a moment, searching for the words to break the silence that had weighed between them for days. "Marcus," he began, his voice trembling. I want to apologize for what I did." Marcus looked at him, surprised but impassive. "Are you serious?" he asked calmly. Whitaker nodded, his eyes downcast. "Yes. I was unfair, arrogant, and," he took a deep breath, "racist. I have no excuse, and I understand if you don't want to forgive me." Marcus remained silent for a moment. Then, in a gesture of quiet wisdom, he replied, "Admitting your mistakes is the first step towards change. I cannot erase what happened, but I can accept your apology if it is sincere." At that moment, Whitaker felt an immense weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time, he understood that true power did not reside in humiliating others, but in the respect and dignity shown to people, regardless of their position. But this realization didn't mark the end of her trials. The outside world, her colleagues, her business partners, all had observed her mistakes, and the road to regaining their trust would be long and arduous. Marcus, silent yet powerful in his dignity, would be her unwitting guide through this difficult redemption. In the weeks that followed, James Whitaker realized that his private apology wouldn't be enough to erase the shadow of his past behavior. Rumors and whispers about his humiliation spread throughout the building. His business partners were hesitant to trust him, and his colleagues gave him skeptical looks at every meeting. One morning, the building manager summoned Whitaker to the main conference room. Several employees were present, as well as board members and key partners. The tone of the meeting left little room for error. Whitaker had to explain himself publicly. "James," the director began, "we have been informed of the incidents involving Marcus Johnson. Your behavior has been deemed unacceptable." Whitaker, his face pale, felt his heart pounding. He sat up and spoke, his voice trembling but sincere. "I acknowledge that I acted arrogantly and, yes, with prejudices I should never have had. I humiliated Marcus Johnson for no good reason, and I deeply regret my actions." Marcus, who was in the room, met Whitaker's gaze. He showed neither anger nor excessive satisfaction. His mere presence had a powerful impact, reminding everyone that integrity and dignity triumphed over fear and arrogance. Whitaker continued, each word costing him dearly with every syllable. "I understand that my apologies alone are not enough. I promise to make amends and to act respectfully, not only towards Marcus, but towards everyone I have hurt." The silence was heavy for a moment. Then, slowly, some of the board members nodded. The once suspicious employees began to sense Whitaker's sincerity. Marcus, finally, nodded slightly. This simple gesture sparked a glimmer of hope in Whitaker's mind. He could still turn things around, but it would take time and concrete action. At that precise moment, Whitaker understood that the path to redemption lay not in words, but in deeds. Every future action would have to be imbued with respect and gratitude toward those he had despised. The true test of his transformation had only just begun. After the public meeting, James Whitaker understood that words alone would not be enough. If he wanted to regain the respect of his colleagues and Marcus, he had to take concrete action. The next day, Whitaker asked to meet Marcus in the lobby. He had prepared a proposal, an in-house training session to raise awareness among all employees about issues of respect, dignity, and diversity. He wanted Marcus to be the lead advisor, so that his experience and perspective would be heard and valued. Marcus looked at him, intrigued but cautious. "Do you really want me to do this?" he asked, his voice calm. Whitaker nodded sincerely. "Yes. I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I want you to be involved. Your ideas and experience are invaluable in changing the atmosphere here." After a moment of reflection, Marcus accepted. He knew that this choice would give Whitaker the opportunity to prove his transformation, but he also knew that the road ahead would be long and that the slightest misstep could cause everything to fail. In the weeks that followed, Whitaker worked closely with Marcus and Rachel Thompson, the lawyer who had first noticed his mistake. Together, they organized awareness workshops for employees, open discussions about mutual respect and professional responsibility. Whitaker, once arrogant and insensitive, was now attentive, listening and learning at every step. The employees began to notice the change. The whispers behind Whitaker's back turned into quiet compliments about his commitment to righting his wrongs. Even those who had witnessed his past humiliations began to see a man capable of acknowledging his mistakes and working to improve himself. Marcus, for his part, remained a discreet but influential presence. His calm and dignity continued to guide Whitaker and remind everyone that respect and patience could transform even the deepest arrogance. But Whitaker wasn't yet completely free from the weight of his past. He knew his future actions would be closely scrutinized, and that any misstep could erase all the progress he had made. This realization forced him to think deeply about every word, every gesture, every decision. As Whitaker's transformation progressed, a new obstacle arose. A major investor, with a ruthless temperament, visited the building to assess the reliability of the management. This man had never forgotten the rumors about Whitaker's arrogant and racist attitude. His presence immediately created a palpable tension in the lobby. Whitaker felt panic rising within him, but he recalled the lessons he'd learned with Marcus and Rachel. This time, he decided to let actions speak louder than words. He greeted the investor respectfully, avoiding any hint of arrogance, and invited Marcus to introduce the lobby and staff, highlighting the concierge's role and expertise. Marcus, surprising everyone with his clarity and confidence, led the tour with professionalism. The investors, accustomed to rigid hierarchies, were impressed to see a humble Whitaker and a respected Marcus. Whitaker's former arrogance, replaced by a collaborative attitude, completely transformed the dynamic. During the visit, a minor incident occurred. A fragile vase toppled over, threatening to break. Marcus reacted quickly, but Whitaker also intervened, helping to secure the object and demonstrating his ability to act responsibly and thoughtfully. The investor observed this gesture and mentally noted the change in Whitaker's demeanor. At the end of the visit, the investor turned to Whitaker and said, "You've changed since what I heard. I see that you're capable of leadership and respect. That's impressive progress." Whitaker felt a wave of relief mixed with pride. But deep down, he knew that the real victory lay not in compliments or investments, but in the relationship he had rebuilt with Marcus and in the respect he had learned to give to others. Marcus, discreet as ever, offered a faint smile. Whitaker's path to redemption wasn't over, but he had just taken a decisive step. This test of sincerity showed that the arrogant man could truly change, if only he continued to choose humility and dignity. A few weeks later, an event held in the building brought together all the employees, business partners, and regular clients. Whitaker knew that this evening would be crucial. His already fragile reputation would be put on the line in front of everyone. He felt the tension rising in his chest, but this time, he was ready to act with humility. At the beginning of the evening, Whitaker addressed the assembly. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice firm but sincere, "I am not here to justify myself. I simply want to acknowledge that my past behavior was unacceptable, and I want to thank those who have helped me understand my mistakes." All eyes turned to Marcus, seated in the audience, and Rachel Thompson, standing beside him. Whitaker continued. "Marcus Johnson, in particular, was an example of patience, dignity, and professionalism that I failed to fully appreciate. I deeply regret having humiliated him and I pledge to act with respect in the future." Marcus, touched but true to his dignity, stood and gave a simple nod. The applause that followed rewarded not only Whitaker, but also the sincerity of his transformation and Marcus's quiet strength. But the public confrontation wasn't over yet. An employee, a witness to Whitaker's past abuses, dared to speak out. "James, now that you have acknowledged your mistakes, are you prepared to consistently act with respect and never again humiliate anyone the way you did?" Whitaker took a deep breath. This question was direct, brutal, but necessary. "Yes," he replied with conviction. "I cannot erase the past, but I can choose each day to act with integrity and respect." The room remained silent for a few moments, then the applause erupted again. For Whitaker, this moment was liberating. It was no longer just a matter of reputation or business, but of personal conscience. He had publicly faced his mistakes and proven that change was possible. As Marcus observed Whitaker, he sensed that the arrogant man he had once confronted was gone. What remained now was a man aware of his faults and ready to act with respect and humility. The weeks following the public confrontation were pivotal. Whitaker continued to work alongside Marcus and Rachel to establish a work environment based on respect and dignity. Every action, every decision, every interaction became an opportunity to demonstrate that he had changed. One morning, the building was the scene of an unusual incident. A major power outage plunged the lobby into darkness, preventing access to the offices and creating potential chaos. Whitaker, far from seeking to lead by force, rushed to Marcus's side. Together, they coordinated the evacuation and securing of the premises, working as a team and demonstrating to employees and visitors that collaboration and mutual respect were far more effective than arrogance. This action was applauded by everyone. The employees, who had once feared Whitaker, began to look at him with a mixture of respect and trust. Marcus, for his part, remained humble, but this time he clearly saw that the man who had humiliated him had truly changed. A few days later, Whitaker asked Marcus to join him in the lobby, alone this time. He symbolically knelt, in a gesture unexpected by his colleagues and visitors who were watching from a distance. "Marcus," he said in a sincere voice, "I can never fully undo the harm I've done to you, but I want you to know that every day I will strive to be a better man. Thank you for showing me what dignity and respect mean." Marcus, moved but true to his usual composure, placed his hand on Whitaker's shoulder. "James," he replied simply, "you understand. That's true strength." For the first time, Whitaker felt a peace he had never known. He was no longer the arrogant, racist man who sought to dominate others. He had become someone capable of understanding, learning, and above all, respecting others. Thus ends the story. The lesson was clear to all who had observed: arrogance and racism can humiliate, but dignity, patience, and respect can transform even the hardest heart. Marcus remained a symbol of quiet strength, and Whitaker, a living example of possible redemption.